We're back. Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today is very exciting because for those of you who have been with me since last year, you know that I'm a huge fan of Only Murders in the Building, and it's back, it's time, it's about to return, and I'm so excited to talk with you guys and discuss your theories and give you my own theories and let you know who I think the murderer is. So last season I did a couple of videos about who killed Tim Kono. So if you A, haven't watched last season, or B, haven't watched those videos, I suggest you go back to my channel and check them out. They talk about specific clues and details that I believe are going to be important for this season as well. So to start off, I want to go over the trailer. We are starting from the nitty-gritty. We are going to check out the trailer, each detail, and talk about our theories. So I need you guys to let me know down below, how do you want me to make these videos for this season? Are you thinking you want one video per episode? So like probably, I think there's 10 episodes, so like 10 videos. I'm really leaning more towards like making one video per episode, or at least one video per every other episode. So anyway, let me know down below, what are you interested in? What do you want to see? I'm so excited to be back with you guys, and let's get into this video. So this is basically, like I said, going to be a review of the trailer. We are going to go through scene by scene, and I'm going to let you know what I see, and at the end of this I'm going to give you my absolute best theories with little to no information, just based on the trailer and last season. I don't want to spoil anything for you. We will be openly talking about last season here, so if you haven't finished it, get on back there. And I also wanted to say, I'm not going to be going through like IMDb to like guess who characters are going to be or read descriptions. I'm really trying to just take what they've given us via the videos that have been released, but we are going to be going through the trailer kind of scene by scene. So if that is not something you're interested in, if you want to like go through episode by episode and you don't want to look at the trailer, then skip this video. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I will see you in the next one. Anyways, let's start with the trailer. So I wrote a list of notes after watching the trailer a couple of times. There is, I think, 2 different trailers, as well as some tidbits that they've released of scenes from the season, but I'm really just going to concentrate on the trailer. I will link it down below if you haven't seen it yet, and so that you know which one I'm talking about. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the most obvious of obvious from last season. We know that someone is trying to frame Mabel and the team for Bunny's murder. So last season ended on a cliffhanger. It ended actually where it started, with a mysterious figure in a tie-dye hoodie stabbed in Mabel's apartment, and we now know that that is Bunny. She is no longer with them, and she was wearing an Only Murders in the Building merch hoodie, and she had a knitting needle, you know, stuck out of her. So this is obviously not good for our trio because they are looking very suspicious right now. So we know that she's wearing the podcast sweatshirt and that she has the knitting needle stabbed, presumably Mabel's, but we don't know. Someone could have like bought a knitting needle, and we just know that Mabel knits. So the next scene that we're going to talk about is we see a girl that we don't know, a young woman, and she pulls a bloody knife out of what I would expect to be like, you know, the knife holders. It's clearly stained with a red substance. We can make assumptions, and we don't know who this character is. She is brand new. Like I said, I'm not going to go on IMDb and look up the name of the character, but my first instinct was like, is this Lucy? Is this Charles's Lucy? They seem to be familiar with this person. When I pause the scene, I can see in the background that they have their suspect list on the wall behind her, so I'm going to assume that they allowed her into their space and that they trust her in this way, considering they're showing her their suspect list. So who is this? We don't know. New character. So the other thing that I want to talk about, some of these are just more like general statements. Mabel says a quote that's like, does anyone else feel like there are loose ends? ends. And I know after watching last season, I felt like there were loose ends. In the last video I made of last season, I felt like some things just didn't add up, and I was really hoping that in this season they would carry last season over and like fill some of those blank spaces for us, and I think that they are actually going to do that, which is so exciting. So I'm hoping that some of the loose ends, which I will talk about at the end of this video, are going to be really revealed, tied up in this like next season. So next we see that the group finds passageways, which we can assume are like behind the walls of the building, these kind of crawl spaces that someone could move through. And there's a couple of scenes throughout the trailer where they're in these like crawl space type areas. Obviously we're not sure, but we can take a guess that they're in the Arconia. It's supposed to be an old building, so maybe there are crawl spaces where you can get from one person's apartment to the other, or at least see and hear from one person's apartment to the other, you know, without having to have a key. So that's interesting. We know that the Demuses had a secret room, so you know, the building is old. It seems to have some hidden passageways, if you will. Next, we see that there are a list of suspects on the wall, and I paused it, and the suspects they had in that moment were the Demuses, Jan, Uma, Howard, and Ndidi. So it's interesting because as far as we know, the Demuses and Jan are both in jail. So could they have done Bunny's murder? I find that highly unlikely. I do not think that they committed that crime. I think that obviously Jan was the murderer last season, so I don't think they're gonna have her be the murderer again. And the Demuses also had their own scandal going on last season, so I don't necessarily think that they are the murderer, but I think it's possible that what happened last season will tie into this season. So next we see a picture of a painting with a question mark next to it, then Savage and 14. So obviously at this point I don't know what those things mean, but we know that Charles Hayden Savage lives on the 14th floor, and we are now clued in that this painting has something to do with the situation this season and what's going on. Now we know that last season was kind of all about like this black market jewelry business and jewelry smuggling, so is it possible that this season is going to be about, you know, paint smuggling and like famous paintings, or maybe like famous painting dupes? Possibly. I think that would be interesting. The next scene right after this in the trailer, we see the same board, but it seems to be arranged differently, or maybe we can just see more of it. As far as I can tell, it's a very small portion of the photo. I can't see the full thing, but it kind of seems like the girl in one of the first scenes that is a new character that we don't know, is like the prime suspect. And then we can also see an image of Lester lower down, as well as the painting again, and we see multiple notes. There are 5 of them, and they say different things. They say, "Who hated Bunny enough to kill her?" "Super fans," "Random madman / woman," "Defending our honor," and "Person who wants painting." So if I had to guess, this is the theories that our favorite trio have for who murdered Bunny. It's either someone who hated Bunny enough to kill her, one of the super fans wanting the season to continue, murdering someone else in the building so that the show can go on, a random madman or woman, defending our honor. I don't know what that means, whether it's just them saying they want to defend their honor, or they're saying that someone who killed Bunny was like trying to defend their honor because Bunny was a real hater of the podcast, so maybe they think that someone knew she was a hater and like wanted to silence her. And then they have a person who wants the painting. So we can assume that this painting has some value, is valuable in some way, and that it was in Bunny's possession, and someone decided to kill her for it. So the next thing that I wanted to point out is just a little quote. They say, "Evidence keeps showing up in our apartments," so we can expect throughout the season that someone is going to be putting this evidence in our favorite trio's apartments to try and frame them, or, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe to try and give them evidence to be like, solve the crime, here you go. We're not sure if it was like a super fan who murdered her. They might do that. like I talked about before, we know there are new characters. I'm not sure of their names. We know that Amy Schumer is a new character. We know that Bunny's mother is a new character. We know that this young woman holding the knife is a new character. And we know that Cara Delevingne is also in this season and will be a new character as well. There might be a couple more that I didn't talk about or haven't noticed yet, but that's what I've seen so far in the trailer. And then we see that another person we don't recognize seems to die in one of these scenes. It's like they're being zipped or unzipped into a body bag, and it seems to be a young man. Don't recognize him. Last season there were multiple murders, so it wouldn't surprise me if this season there are also multiple murders. So if this season concentrates on Bunny, it wouldn't surprise me if they have the murderer go after someone else as well. So maybe there will be 2 murders in this season, possibly by the same person. And then the last thing that we see in the trailer is that Jan is in jail, or she seems to be in jail, and it seems like Charles goes to visit her. When I saw the scene, my gut instinct was that they were going to talk to Jan to basically ask for advice because, you know, from one murderer to another, maybe she has the same thought process and they're like, listen, we're dealing with a new murderer, we uncovered you, but like, who do you think it is? Or like, why do you think they would do this? And she'll probably give them some sage advice. But yeah, that is my analysis of the trailer. As for the painting, I did want to point out, it is of a man and a woman. The man seems to be fully nude and the woman seems to be like partially dressed. And they just seem to be like leaning on each other. So I just did a quick Google search because I wanted to know if maybe this is a real painting. And as far as my quick search can tell, it is not a real painting. Like, it's not a real famous painting. That could have been like a hidden clue maybe, but I'm not seeing any paintings that are obviously famous of like a man and a woman who are older, like leaning against each other in the nude. So I'm going to say that this is not actually a real famous painting. This is just something that they threw in the show. So that's good to know. Next though, I kind of wanted to go over some of the things that were left unanswered last season, and then my theory for maybe what this season is going to cover. So some of the things I wrote about last season that were left unanswered, we have the notes that were found in the trash bag that Tim Kono threw away. They both have different handwriting, so it seems as if they were notes maybe passed to each other. You know, did Tim write one and Jan wrote another, and it was just like notes that they wrote to each other. It did seem like they were being placed there to frame Tim's death as a suicide. So, you know, did someone else who was not Tim or Jan write the notes? It's an interesting question, and I'm wondering if it's going to come back up in the next season. We also never learned definitively who was leaving notes on the doors of residents, so we know that one person left a note on Oliver's door, possibly the same person left a note on Jan's door, but they don't seem to be the same handwriting, I don't think. And we also know that someone poisoned Winnie. So with the whole situation with poison is we know that Jan was like the poisoner. So did Jan come into Oliver's apartment to poison Winnie, and while she was there, did she leave a note on his door? That's possible. But if that is the case, I don't think that it's the same person who wrote Oliver's note and Jan's note. And if that is the case, who's the other person? Like, if Jan wrote the note on Oliver's door and poisoned Winnie, who wrote the note for Jan's door? Now you could say, well, Jan wrote the note for Jan's door. She wanted to make it look like she was a victim. But then, like I said, the handwriting isn't the same, so then I don't think she wrote the note for Oliver's door. But I do think it's most likely that she's the one who poisoned Winnie, but if she didn't, who else is like using poison, and who's threatening Oliver and the trio to end the podcast? So there's this whole other element that like really wasn't answered and explained, and I really think that that is going to drag over into the next season. Who is this mysterious person who wanted the podcast to end? Was that Theo Demas? Was that Teddy Demas? What does that have to do with, you know, the person who stabbed Bunny? These are unanswered questions. I don't have an answer to them. These are just my like little theories. We also know that this was when the podcast like wasn't really popular. It was before it hit big. So it would have had to be one of the few people who knew about the podcast. The next thing I wrote is, do the police have something to do with all of this? We know that the toxicology report that Dee found was not officially submitted into the system. Was someone within the police force trying to cover it up that Tim Kona was poisoned when he obviously was in his toxicology report? Why wasn't that submitted properly? It's a detail that they obviously pointed out, and that's why it's suspicious to me. Next we have Jan gets the note saying, I'm watching you. Like I mentioned, Oliver also gets a note. I don't think it's the same person. I did mention, I think in my last video of last season, that it's possible that Oliver wrote that note to Jan saying, I'm watching you, because he was very suspicious of her and he didn't like her. She was always inserting herself into the group and like broadcasting her opinion kind of loudly, and he seemed to really dislike her. And he does leave for a large amount of time to go get dips. So is it possible that as he was passing by, he wrote this note that was just like, hey, I got my eye on you? Maybe it wasn't so much threatening as just like, I suspect you and I'm watching you. But that's just one theory. We don't know. We have a noise that is pointed out in episode 7. Dr. Grover Stanley hears a shoveling sound, almost like it's in the vents. And we see in the trailer, I think it's Oliver falls out of a vent. So is there something to do with the vents or these kind of like open spaces behind the walls of the Arconia that someone is walking through? Was this happening last season? Like, is that something that's going to carry over? Whenever they point something out, obviously it could be a red herring, but it just means that they're putting effort into pointing it out. And I think that that always has value, whether it's like, this is a red herring, or it's like, we want you to pay attention to this will be important in the future. So even the smallest, littlest details are things that I think are worth mentioning. Next, we have the fact that when the group is talking about the Demuses, Jan keeps deflecting away and saying that she doesn't think they committed the murder. And this is notably weird because Jan is the murderer, so you would think that she would want to frame the Demuses so that she could get away scot-free. There are situations where they might explain this away by saying like, she wanted recognition for the murder. She didn't want someone else to be able to take the blame for what she did because she, wanted to be in the spotlight. That is very possible, but it just seems strange that they have people who are clearly framed in the murder of Tim Kono, who have motive, who have the chance to do it, and she claims that it's not them, and she knows that it's not them because she did it. Why would she do that? Did she have a relationship with the Demuses? Was there more to last season than we were told at the end? It's just very suspicious. It's suspicious that they all lived on the 6th floor right next to each other. And last but not least, we have the big question of this season, which is, who killed Bunny? Who done it? So first of all, I don't think that it's going to be anyone brand new who killed Bunny. It just seems unlikely that a character that they just created is going to have that much influence on the season to like be the murderer when we didn't know them last season. So although new characters are definitely have the ability to be like very involved and suspicious and like maybe involved in other ways, I don't think that any of them are going to be the murderer. I could be wrong, but I'm just saying I don't think so. So I created a list of people from the last season that we know that, might be suspicious characters. So we've got Detective D, Lester, Ursula, Arnov, Dr. Grover Stanley, Uma, Oscar, Mr. Torres, Poppy and Cinda, the Superfans, Will, Miss Udoka, who is Nadidi, and Howard and Sting. Of these people, obviously I don't have Jan or the Demuses in there because I don't think that they committed this murder. I think that they were all, being held in jail. So although maybe it has something to do with like black market artwork, we're not sure, maybe they were involved somehow, but I don't think that it was them who stabbed Bunny. Like I said, I'm not positive who it is. The season hasn't even begun yet. So like, let me see the first episode before I make my true guess of who it is. But off of last season, I think it's going to be tied into like black market painting, jewelry, something to do with like selling artwork and stealing artwork. Is it possible that one of the superfans committed the murder and is depositing clues in our throuple's apartments to get them to solve the murder because they are such big fans of the podcast and they like wanted it to keep going? But yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot more chaotic and convoluted, just the way that last season was, where we had twists and turns and two murders that were semi-connected but like not directly. I am so excited to get started and see what they have in store for us. I have missed Charles and Oliver and Mabel so much. I have missed all of you. So if you're excited for the next season, definitely leave me a comment down below. Who do you think killed Bunny? Like, let me know. Do you think that it was Uma, her bestie? Do you think that it was Ursula, the sea witch? Do you think that it was one of our trio? You know, no theory is too crazy. You let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those YouTube-y things. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more up-to-date content and comments on the series as we go. I'm going to be doing some polls over there at Becca Copeland. I will leave it linked down below. And I will see you guys next week for another video for the first episode of the season. Bye!